Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining in for today's talk. And our prayer is today that this talk will encourage you and that God will speak to you through it. And I do want to say, you got to subscribe to this YouTube channel right now if you want to see more stuff like this, all the latest content coming out. And also, don't forget, check out our website, myhopecity.cc, and connect with us on Facebook by liking our page, Hope City Efton, and joining our Facebook groups. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to see how God is going to speak to you through this talk.
Let's pray this prayer. Say, God, I'm open. God, I'm ready. Speak to me now. We started a few weeks ago in this series that we just entitled My Mind Cave, and really just looking at this whole concept of, really we could say it's our mental health, or the way I've described it is a lot of us will have seasons or times in our life. Sometimes it's a short time, others it sort of goes longer and longer and longer, that we feel as though we're in a cave in our mind, that if we were trying to describe it, that's all we can really describe. It's like we just seem to get darker and darker in our mind, in our thoughts, and what's going on. And so we started this series just looking at ways that we can end up in a mind cave, and some of the things that will get us there. And then we started looking at ways that perhaps we can come out of that cave. And one of the ways that we find ourselves in a cave in our minds is we magnify the negative. We magnify the negative. And that is why I believe throughout Scripture it kind of teaches, or doesn't kind of, it comes straight at it and tells us that you got to be careful what you're thinking about, what you're dwelling on, and it's very important. Philippians says this, chapter 4, verse 8 and 9. It says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Look at someone beside you, or let someone know in the chat. Just tell them, say, think about those things. Think about those things. And so the writer's telling us, like, this is important that we think about these things. In verse 9, "Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice." Someone say practice. Put into practice. "And the God of peace will be with you." So Paul's writing, and he's letting us know that this idea of just what you think is something you have to practice. It's something you have to work at. And so what you see me do and things that I've taught you and different ways, look at me and then you start doing those same things, because it doesn't just come naturally. How many know today that we lived in a pretty messed up world? We live in a messed up world, and it's not new. I mean, our world has been messed up since sin entered the world, and we all just are living in that. But it seems, just our lives now is like, if you want to find some negative stuff, you can find it, right? I can guarantee that I could go to everyone that's in this room, I could go online, start asking you questions, and every one of you could probably tell me some negative stuff or bad stuff that happened in your life this past week. Probably all of you, at least something that you're like, if nothing else, you had to shovel a pile of snow the last couple days, right? No. Some of our people that didn't grow up here, like, why didn't I move to New Brunswick, Canada? They didn't warn me that it would be this bad. But all of us, we can realize and understand that there is a lot of negativity in our world, and it goes a lot beyond that some of us, we could say that we have had experiences and times in our life that's tragic. Times in our life that, in a way, we could describe it as even hell on earth. I wish today that I could come to you and stand before you and just tell you, like, hey, guess what? Like, you don't have to worry that eventually nothing bad's going to happen and everything's going to be good. Well, the reality is that eventually that is the case, and that's called eternity, right? But as long as we are here in this life, there's going to be some bad stuff happening. Jesus warned us, Jesus told us, Jesus promised us that in this life you will have trouble. I love the promises of God. I want to hold on to the promises of God. That's one I don't want, right? Can I skip over that one, God? I don't know, Jesus. Jesus, another time, he would tell us that understand this, that the sun shines or the rain falls on both the just and the unjust, the righteous and the unrighteous, that you could be the best person, and guess what? You're going to have some rainy days. You're going to have some tough days. That is part of life. But this is the problem that a lot of us have, and I believe a reason that a lot of us can end up in a cave in our mind as we begin to magnify the negative. It's like we have this picture of our life, and you know, the picture could be just a beautiful picture. One little part of it could be some cloud and not look that nice, kind of be dark, and it's like we just get a magnifying glass, and that's all we see in the big picture. We magnify the negative. There's different reasons that we do this, and I did a little study and tried to pronounce the words right. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, but there are some words that they would use in psychology. One would be cognitive bias. That some of us, we just have a bias, and what this is, it's a subconscious error in thinking that leads you to misinterpret information from the world around you. And it affects the rationality and accuracy of decisions and judgments. So what this is, some of us, we find ourselves magnifying negative all the time, and there's stuff that's happened in life, but it's like we can't really see everything properly because we have this bias already. It's like you had a man in your life that was a jerk, and now all of a sudden all men are jerks, right? And hopefully there are a few good men that are part of Hope City. Like, I can vouch for a few of them, not all of them, few of them. But we have this bias, right? That it's like I have this in my mind, and so now it's going into everything else. And you could use so many different examples. And then what we have is what's called or referred to as a confirmation bias. And what this is a tendency to look for information that supports rather than rejects one's preconceptions, typically by interpreting evidence to confirm existing beliefs while rejecting or ignoring any conflicting data. We see that a lot today, don't we? We see that a lot. In our minds, we already have a bias, and then we only want to receive more information that will actually lean towards the bias we already have created. There's many different examples that you could think of, but I mean, the crazy thing in our world today is it's not just in our own thinking, but then we have social media, right? And so with social media, we all of a sudden, we already have a bias, and then we want confirmation bias, so what do? We follow people that think just like us, and people that talk about all the stuff that we talk about, and we can cancel anyone that doesn't, right? We just don't even have to listen to them. Like, it doesn't matter. I will give you this warning. Let me tell you something. If you shape your opinion based on one or two things, you need to open your mind a little bit. If you see one or two images and that's how you create all that you think about, you need to look a little deeper. I'll just tell you that. But what we have in our world is we just follow and we cancel anyone that doesn't think like us. And then the crazy thing with social media is if you aren't doing it yourself, it'll do it for you. If you don't know, if there's anyone that just doesn't understand how social media works, here's a little lesson for you. Okay, just so you guys know that the moment you stop and you read something or you click on something or whatever it is, however it all works in the metaverse, it's gonna know that that's the stuff you're into, and that's the stuff that it's gonna confirm with you, and so everything you're gonna start to see is gonna confirm the bias you already had. And so in your world, that's why there's such division in our world today. It's because you're like one side or the other, and it's because you're all the time getting filled with information that just confirms your bias, whatever it may be. And that's the world we live in today, and that's one reason that you can have two people and actually look at the same facts the same facts, but actually interpret it different, right? I'm someone, and I've told you guys, I am someone that believes strongly in the importance of feedback. If you're a little older, you could call it constructive criticism. That I know that I cannot get better if I don't have some people give me some feedback. Like I need to know, I need to learn how I could be a better pastor, how I could be a better husband, how I could be a better dad. That one of the ways I can find that out is through feedback. And so I long for some feedback and having people in my life that can give me feedback. And with that, I also believe it's important that as a pastor that I give others feedback. That I talk to the staff and give them feedback, and I talk to leaders and whoever it might be, because we all want to grow and get better. But it is amazing because you could have a setting where you're talking to someone and you could share with them the facts and talk to them and say, hey, here's a little feedback and I want to talk to you about this. And someone could sit in that meeting at that table of truth and they could leave that meeting and say, what a jerk. Who does he think he is? Better than me, judging me, he doesn't really know, right? And then someone else that could have the very same situation, the very same facts. They could sit in a meeting, getting feedback and leave and say, man, I'm so thankful that my pastor cares about me enough to sit down and talk to me. That he actually wants me to grow and see some areas in my life, the same facts but different outlooks. You see it in sports all the time, don't you? Any sports fans here today? Are the Olympics on right now? Is that they're all... And so many of us will watch sports, and it's like you could have sports fans, and they have their team, and it's like they only see things a certain way. I mean, it wouldn't matter the facts. They could look at the facts, they could see the facts, but you could look at the standings, for example, in the NHL today, and you could look at the facts of the standings, and you meet someone from Montreal, and regardless what the facts are, Montreal Canadiens are still the best hockey team. Like, it doesn't matter if they're last place or not, right? That they just have this bias that right away, it's like, no, they're the best. It's just because some guy got old and retired and someone else is injured. If not, we'd be winning the Stanley Cup this year for sure. But the rest of us could look at the facts and just say, no, Montreal's just a bad team this year. Like, there's no way around it. We read a story in the Bible, and it's found in Numbers, chapter 13, and Moses, the Israelites, they're approaching the land that God has promised them. And they're approaching Canaan, and so Moses, he's going to send out 12 spies. He tells them, he says, I want you to go and I want you to scout out the land. I want you to see it, check it all out, and just let's see, like, is it everything that we believe it is? And is it going to produce good crops? Is it good land? And what are the enemies going to be like? And how hard is it going to be for us to take over this land? And so you 12 spies, you go and you check it all out. And so the 12 spies go and they check it out, and eventually they'll come back to Moses and they let them know, like, hey, so 2 of them come out and they're like, yeah, like, God has brought us this far. God is going to be with us. God is going to keep taking us farther and farther. And guess what? We could take this land. It is everything we dreamed for. Oh, sure, there's a few obstacles, but hey, if God is for us, who could be against us? Let's go. 2 of them out of the 10, but 10 did what? They magnified the negative. Yeah, sure, there's some good produce, some good crops, but we can't go there. We'll be destroyed. We went there, we scouted it out, and you should see the enemy. They're like giants, dude. Like, they're huge. They're so big. We're like grasshoppers compared to them. Like, we don't just think it, but they think it too. Now, first of all, we know that is not the case, right? We know, I mean, you can even study that I probably Goliath, one of the largest guys recorded, so we sort of know his height. Like, no, I mean, there were giants, but regardless, it wasn't like a giant and a grasshopper, right? There's at least, at most, a 4-foot difference. But yet, in their minds, they're saying, we're just like grasshoppers. There is no possible way. The other 2 are like, no, we can do this. But the 10, the majority, a large majority, said, no way can we do this. Because they magnified the negative. What could go wrong will go wrong. And unfortunately today, for a lot of us, we find ourselves in a cave in our mind because we constantly are magnifying the negative in our lives. We can't see anything else. All we can see is what is bad. Elijah, who we read about throughout this series, Elijah, no matter how much God showed up and no matter what God did, when we read about the moment in his life where he cried out to God and said, God, take my life. I don't even want to live. It's not worth it. I can't do it. And the reason he was doing that was one woman gave the report and said, I'm coming after you. And he, for a moment in time, whatever was going on, he stopped seeing all the goodness of God, and all he could see was the negative. So how is it that you and I today can at least strive to get out of that cave, if that cave is magnifying the negative? So you ready, note takers? Ready? Everyone set? Here's just a few that I believe, if nothing else, it helps me, okay? So these are some things that have helped me as I strive to not just focus or magnify the negative. Number one is this: take captive every negative thought. Look at someone close to you, just say, take captive every negative thought. This is what it says in 2 Corinthians. For though we live in this world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. That should encourage you a little bit. Like, the weapons we have can demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We take captive every thought. I need you today to know this and understand this, and I believe even when Paul would tell us the importance of focusing on good things, is that this is something that is continual and it is an action. It is something you have to constantly put into practice, because how often do you think? All the time, right? Like as long as you're awake, and then even when we're sleeping, our thoughts are still there. And how many of you had some crazy dreams? Like, whoa, like your mind's always going. And as long as you're awake, you are constantly thinking stuff. And that is why it is important that we take captive, recognize when thoughts are not godly, recognize when thoughts are making us focus or magnify the negative, and take them captive. Here's the thing about thoughts. The more you think a thought, the easier it is to think that thought. The more you think a thought, the easier it is to think that thought. Some ways I believe that can help us to take captive, especially our negative thoughts, would be this. Someone, if you haven't caught it yet in this series, I do believe one of the reasons that we are in just this crazy time where people are struggling bad with mental health, I believe probably one of the key factors is social media. Like, if you haven't caught that yet in this series, it is. And someone last week, they're like, Pastor, why didn't you just tell everyone to get rid of social media? Here you go, I'll tell you, get rid of social media. You'll be a whole lot better. Right? You will be a whole lot better. I with the team, I've talked to them, like, I don't even want to be on. I don't know what's going on all the time, and I don't want to hear all the negative stuff. Like, I hear it enough. I don't need to just fill my life with it all the time. So, hey team, I realize that a bunch of people are there, and let's throw some positive in with all the negatives. So let's set up a schedule, and some posts will come out for me. Just so y'all know, it will rarely be me. All right? Just because it's like, no. And I believe one of the ways we can actually take thoughts, our negative thoughts, captive is get rid of social media. Like, just get rid of it. It's crazy because, especially over the last however long, not many of us have left our, unfortunately, hour or however long we end up on social media. Have you actually left there and just felt like, I feel so good in Jesus? Like, yes, right now, if you're watching on Facebook Live and you're in church, hopefully that'll be the case. Outside of that, I guarantee you there's a bunch of negative that you're filling your mind with and thoughts. So if you're going to take them captive, you need to quit reading negative stuff. Another way would be this: stop complaining. Stop complaining. What is complaining? What is complaining? Complaining is magnifying the negative. Literally, that is what it is. Like when you are complaining, no matter what, and maybe it's something that you feel you got to get off your chest or whatever, but you are magnifying the negative. You are finding something negative and you're dwelling on that. You're talking about it. And the Bible will tell us different places the importance of not complaining. Another way that we could take captive our negative thoughts would be this, is to lead conversations. Like, don't just be in a conversation, but decide you're going to lead it. Make up your mind that you're going to lead conversation. My wife and I, different times over the last year, 2 years, we'd be going out and going to be with some other people. And my wife would remind me, because I needed reminded more than she needed reminded. She would remind me and she'd say, Justin, can we not talk about COVID today? Can we just not? But actually decide we're going to lead the conversation and kind of like, hey, if this goes down the road, let's just try to change it real quick. We won't just say, oh, we don't want to talk about that, but let's just not dwell there. Lead the conversation. Some of you, another way that you can take some of your negative thoughts captive would be to leave conversations. Like if you're not leading them, just leave them. You don't need to be in that text thread that's talking negative all the time. You don't need to be in that group chat that you realize, man, what is this doing for me? How is this uplifting me? Number 2 would be this. If you're going to come out of the mind cave of just constantly magnifying the negative, is start every day expecting the goodness of God. Start every day expecting the goodness of God. Like, don't start your day with news and articles and don't start your day there, but actually start your day and just have an expectation that God is going to be good to me today. I cannot wait for this day to begin. I have an expectation of what God is going to do. You see, hopefully today it's Sunday, and hopefully you've come to church, you're with us online, and so you're like, hey, it's Sunday. I can't wait for church, and it's going to be a good day. That I believe one of the ways God shows up is dependent on how much we're expecting God to show up. And so even when we come together, if you're not expecting God to be here, then you probably won't find God here. But if you come to church expecting God to be here, you will find God here. I believe that with all of my heart. But a lot of us on a Sunday, we're like, okay, it's church day, it's good. But then Monday, oh, I wish it was Sunday. Oh, I got another week. Hate my job. I hate this and hate that. And start every day expecting the goodness of God. We already sang about it today, but Psalms 27:13, it says, I remain confident of this. Say confident. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I don't believe this is something the psalmist wrote one time, one day, and that's the only time he thought about it. I believe his life was continually believing and trusting God and knowing and declaring, I will see the goodness of the Lord in my life. Lamentations, a lot of Lamentations is talking about stuff we're going through and struggles and bad stuff and negative stuff that comes our way. But this is what it says in Lamentations 3:22-23. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. How would your life be different, and how would it be different in your mind if every day you woke up and truly in your heart you just were expecting the goodness of God? That you woke up and you said, God, I don't know what today has in store. I don't know what the next hour is. I don't know what's going to come my way at work. But God, I know you are God, and I know you are a good God. And no matter what comes my way, I know you are going to be with me. You're going to walk beside me. I can't wait to see your goodness today. Your goodness may show up in a blessing that I've prayed for forever, or your goodness may show up because you carry me through something I'm going to face today. But I'm going to see your goodness. The next thing would be this: look for the positive in every situation. Psychologists would use the phrase cognitive reframing. It's a technique used to shift your mindset so you're able to look at a situation, person, or relationship from a slightly different perspective. Who would have thought all these years that psychologists would actually be using the Bible to come up with their terms? Because the Bible really talks a lot about that, is seeing the positive. Paul, if you're new to church, new to your faith, you may not know all about Paul. You'll hear us talk a lot about Paul here. He was a guy that was converted actually after Jesus died, rose again, ascended to heaven. And just amazing conversion. He was actually going out and having Christians killed. One of the main guys that was like cheering them on, like let's get rid of all the Christians, all these Jesus followers, the people that are part of the way. Let's get rid of them. And Jesus showed up in Paul's life one day, and his life was forever changed. And he would eventually write the majority of even the New Testament letters are written by Paul. Outside, obviously, of Jesus, understanding that Jesus is the church, that he started it all. Probably one of the reasons we're gathered today is because of Paul's life. And Paul, after he became a follower of Jesus, a part of the way, he gave his life to the good news. He gave his life to proclaiming the gospel. That just everywhere he went, he preached Christ and him crucified. And everywhere he would go, he would let the people know this is who I was, but I met Jesus, and this is who I am now. And that was Paul's life. And at one point in Paul's life, he decided to go to Rome. And so he's going to Rome, and probably, I believe, one of the reasons he would go to Rome, I'm sure in the natural, he's thinking, like, Rome is a great place to see the gospel shared. Like if the gospel could be shared in Rome and people find Jesus there, like, what a great place for the gospel to spread out around the world. Like if these people become followers of Jesus, like there'll be churches started here and there and everywhere. And I can just imagine Paul's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to preach crusades, and there's going to be hundreds and thousands of people come, and they're going to hear about Jesus, and their lives will be changed. And Paul goes to Rome, and instead of preaching a big crusade, he gets thrown into prison. Now, if it was me, in my mindset at times, especially when I allow myself to get into a cave in my mind, I probably would pen something like this to the staff. Well, guys, this really sucks. I came here expecting everyone would be saved, and all I got was thrown into a dungeon. I just don't get it. Like, why would God save me and send me here for this? I'll probably die in this cave, and no one is going to hear about Jesus. Great job, God. That's how sometimes I probably would feel like penning. When I have expectations of something and then I end up here. For Paul, he's in a literal dungeon, but listen to what he writes in Philippians. It says, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. Guys, hey, I know this isn't what we planned. Like when we did up the invites on social media, when we did up the posters, this wasn't what we thought was going to happen. We're in a dungeon now, but just so you know, it still served to advance the gospel. Man, the prison guards, man, I get a collective audience. They're with me 8 hours a day. They have to listen to me tell them about Jesus. Like they can't. That's their job. 8 hours and it shifts and someone else comes in. The whole palace guard now has heard the gospel. Because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. Paul didn't just look for the positive in every situation. Paul knew the positive in every situation. You're going to come out the cave in your mind and stop magnifying the negative. You need to start magnifying the goodness of God. Magnify the goodness of God. You cannot control what happens to you. You can't control it. The rain's going to fall on the just and the unjust. In this life, you will have trouble. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you look at it. Magnify the goodness of God. Craig Rochelle says this. He says, stop interpreting God through your circumstances. See, a lot of us, that's the problem, right? Life just happens, and then somehow God gets all the blame. Like we interpret God through our circumstances, and Craig Rochelle would say, and start interpreting your circumstances through the goodness of God. Magnify the goodness of God. This season, going on 2 years, it hasn't been a 2-year battle for me. I don't think any of us thought 2 years ago we'd be at the stage we're at today. So I can't say when it got really tough. I'm no different than any of you. If I didn't know for sure that the call of God was on my life to be your pastor, I 100% would have quit in the last year. So many reasons, and you all have your reasons for being in caves in your minds, and for me it's just, God, this isn't what I expected. God, God, all we saw when I became lead pastor of 3 years was just every weekend, like more and more people would show up and the place would be full and church family and excitement, and then this happened and people walk away from their faith and people this and that, and then half your church family still can't even come out because of their compromise or whatever it might be, and we're gathering when we can and how we can, and then we can't even, people die and we can't even mourn how we should be able to mourn. And part of the mourning process is people coming together and having people sick and dying in the hospital, being told you can't even go see them and pray with them. And I can easily find myself in seasons and moments where I'm magnifying the negative. But the only way I find myself being able to come out of that is by starting to magnify the goodness of God. In the last 2 years, in so many ways, has not been fun, and I can dwell on that, but I took my phone out, and a lot of reasons these things are not good. One thing that we seem to do a lot more of is capture images. I took my phone out this week, and I took my phone out and started just looking through my images, and if I was to sit down and talk to you, I could very easily tell you about all the bad stuff I've walked through in the last 2 years, and I know probably very minimal compared to what you have walked through. But as I started looking at my images on my phone, I gave a few to the team and just asked them to put them up. I started looking at these images, and you know what? I found that I didn't see the negative stuff over the last 2 years. I didn't see a whole lot of the stuff that I find myself so often magnifying. I began to realize, like, no, God, you've still been good. Like God, we've had some really neat stuff happen, and God, we've got to spend time with our families we never thought we would, and God, we come up with other creative stuff to do, and God, like so many things, and I begin to realize that, wow, God is good. God is good. And I don't know today who needs to hear this and who needs to get this deep in your heart, but please know and understand, life is going to be hard. There are going to be seasons that are going to be storming and raining, and it's going to feel like there is no way out. But I need you to know that even in the middle of the worst circumstances, the goodness of God is still evident in your life. So take those thoughts captive. Stop magnifying the negative and begin to magnify the goodness of God.
I hope today's talk was encouraging to you. And hey, we would love to hear from you of how God spoke to you through this talk. And again, you can message us on Facebook. Make sure to like and follow us while you're there. Hope City F10. You can reach out on our website, myhopecity.cc. And don't forget, subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with all the content coming out. And we are excited to see how God is going to continually move through your life through this. Love you guys. Have a great day.